Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Aphra's Artifacts, where we do some archaeology of our own and dig into the queer side of Star Wars. I'm your host, Alia Morgaine, and it's so great to have you here. Well, today we're going to talk about our titular character for the channel, Doctor Aphra. So, who is she? What are her traits? What's her personality like? What's her character? We're going to dig into these things and talk about one of my absolute favorite Star Wars characters. And it doesn't hurt that the girl is queer. So Dr. Aphra started off as a side character in the 2015-16 Darth Vader comic run. And then she leapt to the 2015-2019 Star Wars comic run. Then went back to the Darth Vader run. And then ended up with her own comic series, her own action figures, and even a short story in the From a Certain Point of View book of 40 short stories that came out a few years ago. Now she's on her second comic run. I mean, this character has gotten into the hearts, minds, and souls of Star Wars characters. Everybody loves Aphra. Well, some people may find her problematic. They may think her chaotic, villainous, always out for herself. But she's so much more complex than that. There's so much more to her. She is smart, cunning, funny, loyal. She really is loyal. And she surprisingly has a good heart deep, deep down. So she may not be a role model, but she is a deeply complicated, fully realized, and thoroughly fleshed out character that could be any of us. And that makes her absolutely fabulous in my book. So thank you. Thank you, Kieran Gillen, for creating such a wonderfully complex queer icon. And yes, I don't use that word lightly. She is a queer icon. So her queerness did take many, many comic books to be revealed, but now she's been in a relationship with 3 different women, and that just makes my little rainbow heart super, super happy. So who is Aphra? Well, she was born Chelly Lona Aphra, and her parents were Corin, her father, and Lona, her mother. She had an extremely trying family life in her childhood. Lots of things went wrong for her. To begin with, her father, Corin, was so focused on mythical civilizations that nobody else believed even existed. And he was on the hunt for them. He was also an archaeologist, off to find these mythical civilizations. Well, her mother, Lona, realized that he was never going to get his head out of the clouds. And so she whisked Aphra away when she was just a little girl to the remote planet of Arbaflux, where she figured they would live a safe and happy life. Not too much longer after that, Lona was killed by raiders. And Aphra got to see it happen with her own eyes. So she has a lot of trauma in her childhood. Her dad wasn't really there for her, didn't really know she existed even. And then her mother was killed in front of her own eyes. So a lot of that trauma is carried over as she gets older. And it makes her want order, want security, want strength in government. Although she's a very chaotic character, she believes that the world around her should have a lot of structure to it. Which leads us to her first job that we see her having, which is working for Darth Vader himself. While she is afraid of death by his hands, she also wants to work for him because has this aura of strength. He enforces order. He's all about structure and and the jackboot of the Empire, you could say. And that's something that she really, really desires because of how she saw her mother die. As she says, strong and order beats good but weak on every planet in the galaxy from now until the end of time. So eventually, as the story progresses, her views do change a bit, and she begins taking it upon herself to protect the people that she loves the most. And her views on the galaxy begin to shift as well. But we start off with her working for Darth Vader, and we are introduced to her two droids, 000, a murderous protocol droid, and BT-1, a murderous blastomech droid. In other words, a weapon form of an astromech. And our first intro to the character being her awakening to homicidal, torture-prone mechanics meant that we were in for a wild ride. And we have not been disappointed yet. So, her ship is the Archangel. She's on number 3 now. Disaster may be her middle name. She's also super chatty. She makes jokes, keeps the mood light, has a devil-may-care attitude. There's always levity, an aura of levity around her. But part of this is because she's nervous about the situation she's in, and part of it's acceptance. She knows that she is in super dangerous situations. She knows that she's always so close to the brink of death. And because of this, she tries to make things light. She tries to use humor to deal with the heaviness of everything around her all the time. So, another thing about her that's really great is she is incredibly self-aware. She understands who she is. She knows her problems. She knows what she needs to fix. For example, she says to Vader early in her career with him, you know, you can trust me, but you shouldn't. I am a walking, talking, stupid risk. Which we see come to fruition more than once. So her first act of duplicity is when, at the behest of Darth Vader, she gets a crew of bounty hunters together to attack an Imperial shipment of repossessed credits. Well, the haul the bounty hunters get, and there are 4 of them, is smaller than she advertised to them. Well, she tells them, I would never cross 4 bounty hunters. I mean, I'm not suicidal. I may always flirt with death a little bit, but I'm not suicidal. And it turns out, well, she may not have been afraid to cross 4 bounty hunters, but she may have been afraid to cross 4 bounty hunters, but she was not afraid to cross 3. So she had teamed up with Black Chrysanthemum, who is a wonderful Wookiee character that becomes an ongoing feature of her stories, and I love him dearly. And so they team up together, and they end up with the actual haul. And you see her heart begin to open up when she talks to Black Chrysanthemum and says, you know, I know the Zonti brothers enslaved you. They made you a gladiator. I want to help you out. I want to help you find them and deal with them. And she even asked Vader for his help with that situation. So we see her being kind to another sentient. Then her second act of kindness is when she is dealing with Padme's mortician. So Vader sends her on a mission to talk to Padme's mortician and get confirmation that she had a child before she died. And Aphra goes in with the knowledge that, yes, she had a son. So she just asks for confirmation that a son was born and doesn't try to get any more information out of the mortician. While that blind-spotted Vader in regards to Leia, it was an act of kindness for Aphra. As she said, we were here to do the job, not be sadists. And you can see in this image that she is feeling really heavy about this moment. Like, she wants to be a better person. In issue number 18 of the Star Wars 2015-19 run, we get our first glimpse into the possibility that Aphra, maybe, is she, Is she? Is she queer? When Sana Starro says, I am so gonna kill you before this is through, and Aphra responds, I've missed you too, sweetie. Okay, it's not much. But before that exchange, we could have thought they were just really estranged friends from the distant past, or business partners where something went totally wrong. And as the issues progress, we start to see, wait a second, Sana and Aphra were an item. They were a couple. And don't worry, Sana and Aphra are getting their own episode, so we're not going to talk about them much here. But I did want to mention that this appearance of Aphra was her 19th appearance. So her queerness didn't come out until the 19th comic issue that she was in. So in her own comic book run, moving forward, she started locating and liberating rare artifacts. So back to what she was doing before she was reactivating dangerous weapons. And this is where the story ramps up to 11. She begins to change her outlook on life. We learn about the deep, dark corners of her past. And we get my favorite queer relationship in all of Star Wars between her and an Imperial officer named Magna Tolvin. Again, there will be an episode in honor of my birthday, which is coming up, on Magna Tolvin and Darth and Doctor Aphra. So people in the comic book community that really love Tolvin and Aphra call them Tolfra. So it's going to be all about Tolfra, and it's going to be wonderful. Anyway, her opinions on the galaxy do start changing, and we see this at first when she's talking to her dad after they've landed on Yavin 4, and he's like, this is a remote planet. Why in the world are there stormtroopers here? And he says he doesn't believe the Death Star ever existed. He's clueless about the Battle of Yavin, and Aphra is appalled. She says, millions were turned to dust, and you just didn't notice? But 000 is confused as the reader, since she's spoken so highly of the Empire before this. He says, don't you support the Empire's steel glove clasping around the throat of the universe is the best way to protect people? Well, Aphra responds, a little snarkily, if I was interested in moral instruction from an emotionless killer, I'd have kept working for Darth Vader. So then we get to the Screaming Citadel arc, which is a mix of Star Wars 2015-19 run and the first Doctor Aphra run. It goes back and forth between the two runs, where Aphra leaves Luke to fend for himself against a queen who has control of a hive mind with the highly dangerous brain symbiotes. It's a bit creepy. So her gut reaction is to cut her losses and run. Leave the rebels behind, leave Luke behind, damn the consequences. But she turns around and she helps save Luke along with his friends. Even Sana, who every chance she gets talks about how much she hates Aphra, recognizes how big a step this was for the rogue archaeologist. Sana says, you left, but you came back. That's as good as anyone can expect from you. And 000 puts the whole situation perfectly. In regards to Luke, he says, he went through an experience just as traumatic as yours and remains a positive, delightful person, devoted to a better existence for all sentient life. And you realize how special he is too late to retain his respect. Well, Aphra knows it's true. She knows that she is not a good person, but she's trying to do better, which is what makes this story so good. So every issue typically ends in an Aphra's in a bad position. How will she get out of this? Sort of way. And it is an incredible delight to read. I love the ending of every issue because it's just like, oh my God, how's this going to work out? In my reviews on the StarWarsReview.blogspot.com, I always end them by saying, I don't know how Aphra's going to get out of this one. Wait, I've said that 1,000 times before. It's pretty great. So, other people's choice words to describe Aphra include Sana saying trash worm, Hera Syndulla calling her a toxic object, Tam Posla, and there will be a video on Tam Posla and his lover Kasim Bog in an upcoming show. So Tam Posla says blackmailing, tech tinkering, tomb tossing, queen of all she-devils, and, love this word, malefactress. Han says, in just the 2 times we've crossed paths with that crazy doctor, I've gotten strangled, knocked unconscious, and covered with wasp worms. 000 calls her life a flaming trash compactor. And Aphra herself says that she is a guilt-riddled sentimentalist during the quiet times, and during the action-filled times, she thinks get rich, save on skin, damn everyone else. The only time that I had a truly bad taste in my mouth about Aphra was when she and Velada, who was her ward for a while, although she didn't like the word, and she would not admit that she was Velada's ward. I mean, that Velada was her ward. But that's what it was. And Aphra ended up... So, Aphra and Velada are escaping from the rebels. And they leave Girdle, Velada's pet caberworm, behind. And all Aphra has to say about it is, Girdle's not part of the bigger picture. Oh my God. Like, I was shook to the core. Because Velada and Girdle had a bond like me and my cat, who's been with me for 16 years. Velada and Girdle were attached to the hip, loved each other, and Aphra just leaves Girdle behind. It was horrible. Honest disgust towards Aphra. But everybody does something horrible at some point in their life, and Aphra was bound to do something terrible that made me not like her in that moment. So it's okay. So the 38th issue of Aphra's first series run looks back on all that has come before, and Aphra looks back on things with more than a little regret. She says, I used a flight school as a battering ram, got swallowed by a Shadowfang beast, activated a Hellhole Guardian. I helped prevent Nabarsine outbreak, which, to be fair, I also caused. I blew up a lot of Tuca cats. I awoke a fungus and thought it was a Jedi. I saved the life of a monster just to get revenge for Mom. I fell in love. Ruined it. And she starts crying. She even throws Vader off the Sin of Hoth to buy the rebels more time and to protect Velada and Tolvin. She grows. In the 40th and last issue of her first run, it's a very self-examining, introspective look into Aphra's life. She says, I spent most of my adult life kind of hot for discipline. The idea of it, I mean. Oh, not just the girls in uniform thing, although sure, that. But mostly a galaxy like this, the jackboot always felt safer than the jungle. I guess it's about time I admit I always made a little exception for myself. Like, the tyrannical forces of brutally imposed order sure are impressive, just as long as they're pointed at someone else. And she says, being a one-woman trail of destruction hasn't exactly brought me health and happiness. Know what I mean? And finally, time is the only gift an irredeemable disaster can give to anyone. And she does give time to Tolvin and to Velada and to the rebels. So Aphra grows and learns and loves and loses and is by far one of the most dynamic and powerful characters in all of fiction. I'd gladly have her in the queer camp any day. Sure, she started out a bit rough and kind of scary with her murder bots, but she didn't stay there. While she's still not a role model, Aphra certainly is a queer character that I can be proud of. Well, that's all I have on Aphra. I actually had 36 pages of notes. I went through 70 comic book issues, so there's a lot more out there. If you want to know more, hit me up. So be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter at Alia Morgaine, and peruse my blog at thestarsreview.blogspot.com. Remember to tune in next week for the story of Aphra and Sanastaros. Remember, new content will be released every Sunday at 6 p.m. Central, and may the Force be with you.